Okay, so here we are. This podcast chapter is going to be pretty raw, pretty unscripted, pretty uncut, surrounded by toys and my home life messiness. I always get a little bit nervous when I record podcast chapters. I guess I'm the type of person who prefers to be behind the scenes, and being in front of the camera is actually quite intense. But I still want to do it because I'm on a mission. And just because something is a little bit scary doesn't mean that you're not capable of doing it. It doesn't mean that you have to constantly feel anxious doing it. There's always a way to do it in a way that still feels safe and still feels meaningful. And here we are. Over the summer, I took 2 months off, as I have been doing for the past few years. It's been a long time wish of mine to actually be able to take longer stretches of time off from work. And I never thought that would be possible for me. So a few years back, I decided if that's something that I really wanted to be able to do, I would just start practicing. And this has been the third year now that I think the third year that I've taken 2 months off over the summer holidays. And why those 2 months? Just because we have a kid in school and we are forced to take 2 months to make space for the summer holidays anyways, which is 6 weeks. Stuff falling all over the place. What else is new? Which is 6 weeks over the summer holidays here. So I just decided to kind of let those overlap. You might think of as my version of Bill Gates' famous Think Week. Bill Gates is known to take 1 or 2 weeks a year completely off. And he goes to a cabin in the woods somewhere and just brings loads of books. And the time is just spent reading and thinking about his professional and personal goals. He does this so that he can come back refreshed with new ideas. It sparks creativity. It helps you regain mental clarity and mental space. And I later learned that there are a lot of people who have different versions of this Think Week. So right now, in this stage of life, with a kid in school, taking those 2 months with less workload is my version of a Think Week. Honesty disclosure, I am not yet there that I'm taking off fully or completely for those 2 months, but I have been decreasing my workload, pausing some things in my business, and just to have more time as a family, spending more time with my kid. So decreasing my working hours to about 1 to 2 hours a day, and the rest of the time just spending time with my kid and also relaxing a little bit. So this year I did that again, pausing some of my client work, or most of my client work, and but continuing things like my newsletter and continuing with developing a new coaching program in the background, things like that. And just taking some time to think. There always comes a time in your work, your business, especially if you work from home, or if you have a lot of projects, if you're juggling a bunch of things, if you run your own business, any of those scenarios, it's very easy to get really full in your head and to kind of have all your mental space occupied by all the things that you're doing. And getting into this kind of constant busyness, right? Just going through the day-to-day stuff. And as important as it is to keep things going and to be consistent in that way even, but just to keep the ship afloat. That constant busyness can kind of, we can get caught up in it and forget to just check if we're still moving in the direction that we want to go in. And what can happen if you don't check this regularly is that after a while you just wake up one day and you feel completely disconnected from what you're doing, or you feel like nothing that you're doing is really meaningful or giving you fulfillment. And it can feel like you're stuck in a life that you've created, but you actually no longer want. And I've been there before, and I see that happening around me a lot. So now I really make a conscious effort to constantly check my compass, if you will, and check my direction. And taking this time off is one of the ways that can work really well to do that. So my think week didn't really go according to plan. Initially, I thought, you know what, I just want to write. I want to write as much as possible. I'm a writer at heart. I used to be a professional writer. So writing is really the way that I am able to help formulate my thoughts and just make connections. And towards the end of last year, I could feel that things were coming together in terms of my coaching business. I'm not young in years, but it's only been about 5 years since I started my coaching business. And I've been doing that part-time the whole time for about 24 hours a week, building up things step by step, figuring things out along the way. The first few years were a lot of experimentation and exploration, trying things, failing at a lot of things. Still doing that, by the way. But I could feel that things were coming together. I was getting that focus. It was starting to become clear what I really want to do with this business. And but it was a lot of things like floating in my head, which can happen when you're just managing the day-to-day stuff. So taking some time to think was very important for me to be able to make those connections. Let me just check if I'm still recording. Yeah, we're good. What was I saying? Yes. So my plan was to just write as much as I possibly could. That did not really happen. And I think my kid and I, we were on vacation together for about 2.5 weeks, visiting family abroad. And the rest of the time we spent at home. We did some day trips, things like that. And I thought, I'm just going to spend every day, those 1 to 2 hours that I work every day, I'm just going to write. Everything's just going to crystallize in front of me, and I'm going to be super pumped and psyched to take the next step. Well, that did not happen at all. I think I made some scribbles in my notebook, and I felt completely confused. It was confusing. It was frustrating. It didn't feel like it was going anywhere. And it felt like I wasted that time, which is interesting, right? Because taking 2 months off of work has been my dream, my literal dream for about 10 years already. And I'm living it. I've been living it for the past 2 years, and I felt like I was wasting time. Very interesting, right? So I came back from my break actually feeling kind of frustrated that I didn't write as much as I wanted to. I didn't connect the dots as I had hoped I would connect them. It felt like I dropped a pie. And the image that I have is me actually dropping a pie, which has happened. It was an apple pie, or maybe more like a strudel, if that matters to you. And I got too excited pulling it out of the oven, and it just slid off the baking sheet onto the floor in front of the oven. And as someone who loves sweets and treats, you cannot imagine how the disappointment. I swear that's probably the most disappointed I have been in my entire life. I don't know if you relate to that at all, but it was tough. So it felt like I dropped the pie. But once we came back, we were starting to get back into the old rhythm, going back to school, all that stuff, lunches, whatever. And something interesting happened. I asked myself, okay, what had I wanted to write about anyway? Do I even remember what that was? And going through those almost illegible scribbles in my notebook and all those things, that's when the pieces started to come together, like puzzle pieces. I felt like the pieces had been scattered all over the room, and I was looking and looking and looking, but they didn't quite fit. And then finally, I found this piece that connected to a couple of other pieces. It was like the central piece. And that moment of feeling, oh, now I'm connecting the dots, is such a relief. And it's such a inspiring and exciting moment. There's also a little bit of fear there, I'm going to be honest. And this is a little bit different for everyone, how you experience those stages. But for me, the connecting the dots stage is this mix of excitement and fear. And that means I'm on the right track. The mix is important. If it's just fear, I need to run away from it as fast as possible. And so that pie that I dropped, felt like I dropped, it was unexpectedly delicious. By the way, not condoning eating pies off the ground, nor will I say I've never done that. Feel free to draw your own conclusions. All I can say is that even a drop pie can still be very delicious. So going through my messy notebook and thinking back through all the conversations that I had with some wonderful people from this community, conversations that I had with my partner, with family when we were visiting them abroad, it all started to connect. It's not just about business decisions for me. It's a total palette, because my philosophy now is that I want to create a life that is meaningful and fulfilling, and then have a job that accommodates that, instead of the other way around, what I used to do in the past. How do you feel about this philosophy of first thinking about a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling to you, and then having work that accommodates that? It's completely different than how I used to think about work and meaning. And I'm curious to know what that's like for you. This was part of a very long and raw podcast chapter that I recorded recently, and I decided to cut it into 2 pieces. So next time I will share with you part 2. That chapter will be about a big decision that I've made for the podcast and for my business moving forward. And that is that I will be saying goodbye to Productive Introvert Community. But this is not a cliffhanger, and I'll immediately say that it's not a complete goodbye, because there will be something else taking its place. And I'll tell you more about that soon. Thank you for hanging out with me today, and let's talk soon.